where news comes first. You're watching ABC7 Extra. Now, here's your host, Darren Hunt.
It's March 24th, 2013. Welcome to ABC7 Extra. I'm Darren Hunt. Lately, a couple of our local leaders have been very vocal in our nation's capital, addressing hot-button issues like immigration reform and border security. Which one should be our country's priority? El Paso County Judge Veronica Escobar and new Democratic Congressman Beto O'Rourke have been quick to paint a picture of our border that is secure, but in need of change. Changes in immigration reform and in the way we police our border and bridges. But are their views your views? What is a safe border? And do you think the opinions and images of the border they are portraying in Washington are accurate and in our best interest? Joining us tonight to discuss that will be El Paso County Judge Veronica Escobar, who last week testified in front of a U.S. House subcommittee on border security, stating immigration reform should come before enforcement. Also joining us will be Congressman Beto O'Rourke, who, in addition to speaking out on the importance of immigration reform, helped pass a bill in Washington last week that he hopes will lower bridge wait times at our bridges. If you have a question or a comment for the county judge or the congressman tonight, call 496-1775. Email us at abc7extra@kbie.com or send a tweet to @dhuntABC7. But first, let's take a look at what Judge Escobar and Representative O'Rourke have been saying in Washington.
I appreciate the opportunity to be here with
Two El Pasoans were on Capitol Hill last week to talk border security.
You do not want the Department of Homeland Security to be the stumbling block.
The chairwoman of the Homeland Security Committee called this meeting to come up with metrics to define what a safe border is.
What's important there is whether or not we have got the capability to deal with the threat that the chief of the Border Patrol perceives.
CBP and Border Patrol argued more detailed information must be used than just apprehension statistics. That was the concern heading into the meeting. And as expected, the El Paso County judge's words were far different.
those of us who've been engaged in this issue have long said that immigration reform should come first. That approaching enforcement first or only is a backward way to deal with the flow of people and goods across our borders.
Escobar argued the numbers don't tell the story. Numbers like 177,000, the number of illegal immigrants caught here in Texas in 2012, or the 1.7 million pounds of narcotics that were seized.
I define security by our ability to protect our vital interests.
But not everyone agreed.
It is not possible to have absolute security.
Well, my question is if you could stop one terrorist.
Well, the answer is of course.
Okay.
El Paso Congressman Beto O'Rourke also sits on the committee. He took time grilling CBP and Border Patrol officials why numbers of how many patrols weren't available.
The prevailing wisdom right now is that prior to comprehensive immigration reform, we need to secure the borders. You and Acting Commissioner McAleenan have said our borders have never been more secure, and the judge is saying after comprehensive immigration reform, I think we can look forward to even greater security.
He recently spoke before Congress and, like Escobar, urged immigration reform over additional enforcement.
While we should always seek to improve the security of this country in ways that are consistent with our Constitution, I remind my colleagues of our efforts and the cost borne by border communities as we work to secure the border in the years since 9/11.
O'Rourke said it's time to focus on immigration reform and the secure legal flow of people and trade.
The people of El Paso, Texas, a city of immigrants that was recently ranked as the safest in the United States, can tell you this: pass comprehensive immigration reform and you will have true border security.
O'Rourke is also focused on lowering international bridge wait times without burdening the taxpayer. A bill he supported passed this week, allowing Customs and Border Protection to enter into public-private partnerships. Those partnerships could help fund more agents.
As early as this year, we might be able to fund more CBP officers and get our long wait times at our international bridges down.
Some funding would come from the City of El Paso's Bridge Fund, per a 2011 City Council resolution. O'Rourke said now it's about reaching out to organizations and businesses for additional funding.
All of these folks have a vested interest in getting these long wait times that are now up to 3 or 4 hours down to something reasonable. Their businesses will prosper, El Paso's local economy will prosper, and will create more jobs.
Unless something is done due to to the government budget cuts, Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano said those wait times could surge to 4 to 5 hours.
What this does is it allows El Paso to take its future into its own hands, not depend on the federal government to get its act together.
Joining us now is El Paso County Judge Veronica Escobar and El Paso Congressman Beto O'Rourke. Welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. Great having you guys in tonight. I appreciate it. Beto, let's start with you here. Do you think you got your point across last week?
You know, it depends on who you ask on the subcommittee. I think I did. I think that, well, afterwards I had some great compliments from the CBP folks and the Border Patrol folks, as well as some of the staffers and the members of the subcommittee. I think what's important during these hearings and why it's important for El Paso to be at the table with decision makers like the congressman and his colleagues is because we want to make sure that our interests are pushed as aggressively as possible at the national level, because the national policymakers are going to be making policy that impacts our daily lives. And so when we hear during immigration reform talks that enforcement has to come first again, even though we spend $18 billion a year on it already, what that translates into, what that is code for, is more of what we don't need and not more of what we do need.
All right. Let me ask you this before we get to Beto, but how does reform first help security? Explain that to me.
Actually, I can explain it in the words of former Border Patrol Chief David Aguilar, who wrote just a few years ago that when the flow of people across the border, undocumented folks across the border, is mingled with people who really, truly want to do us harm, so economic migrants, for example, who are here for work, or members of families that want to be reunified, when they're mingled with the small percentage of undocumented people who want to do us harm, what it does is, in his words, is it creates clutter on the border. And so if you're able to deal via policy with people who want to be reunified with their family, and you can have more humane reform that way, or if you want to create a pathway for economic migrants who are looking for work and clearly have found work on this side of the border in either the construction industry or the agricultural industry, if you take care of those folks via policy, then you can better focus your resources on truly securing the border, on securing us from terrorists or drug cartels or the true bad guys who want to do harm to this nation.
All right, Congressman, it's sort of like, I guess, instead of looking for a needle in a haystack, you're removing a lot of that hay so you can get closer to that needle and you only have a little bit of hay around it, in other words.
Yeah, and I really appreciated the judge's point at the hearing. It challenges this conventional wisdom that to trigger comprehensive immigration reform, we're going to need to have greater border security. And she pointed out that the border's never been more secure. We're spending $18 billion a year to secure that border today, twice what we were spending in 2006. We've more than doubled the size of the Border Patrol. And a lot of that spending has also come at the expense of a better flow of people and commerce through our ports of entry. And I don't have to tell the people of El Paso, there are tens of thousands of jobs in this community, millions nationwide, that depend on that flow of people, shoppers, trade, and legitimate traffic that are crossing through our ports. And so I think her argument, turns that idea around and says, if you can pass comprehensive immigration reform, if you can remove a lot of that clutter, to use the former Border Patrol chief's phrase, then you can focus on those top priorities to secure our border, to secure communities like El Paso, and to make sure that we don't compromise our economy and the ability to create jobs. And that's one of the things I'm sure the judge hears in her office. It's one of the things I hear as a representative of this community in Congress. People want us to focus on creating jobs, opportunities, get investment in